Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at the Return to Hoth expansion for Star Wars Imperial Assault from Fantasy Flight Games. Star Wars Imperial Assault is if you play it in the campaign mode, it's a campaign-driven game where you and the other players take control of one player is going to be controlling the Imperial forces of the Star Wars universe. In between the movies, let's see, I think the first set takes place between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. This set kicks off where Empire Strikes Back starts, like right after the opening scenes, as a matter of fact, or like the first chunk of that movie. And one player controls the Imperial forces, the other players take control of sort of ancillary C-list heroes from the Star Wars universe, while the major heroes are off doing their thing in the movies. Now, what the Return to Hoth expansion adds is obviously a lot of stuff themed around Hoth. There's tons of different terrain. Many of the campaign scenarios in the book are based on Hoth. I don't want to give away too much. I'm always weird about giving spoilers away in Imperial Assault or Descent or anything like that, because a lot of the information is only privy to the Imperial player, and it's doled out to the characters. So I don't want to spoil that surprise. But obviously, much of the stuff takes place on Hoth. You have a lot of there's Wampas, and there's the snowstorm troopers, and there are 3 new characters for the Rebel players to play as well, who are all pretty interesting and have their own quirks. So let me go ahead and give you a brief look at all the new stuff that comes in the expansion set. I am not going to cover in any great detail the stuff for the skirmish mode, because I don't play the skirmish mode. It's just not for me. I don't think that some people do. I think a lot of people primarily use this as the campaign mode, though, so I'm going to focus on that. Although I will say right here, and I'll mention this again in the overview, that with the Return to Hoth set, you can have up to a 4-player skirmish going on. Previously, it was only 2 players. So if you are interested in skirmish mode, you should take note of that. But in any case, let me show you the stuff. Then we're going to come back and let you know what I think. Alright, I'm going to show you all the new stuff that comes in the Return to Hoth expansion for Star Wars Imperial Assault. As you can see, it adds a lot of new stuff. You have new types of terrain, new miniatures, new forces for the Imperials, and 3 new characters for the game, as well as a bunch of different cards to add to the existing decks. We'll cover most of that. So obviously, one of the most important things, at least if you care about the campaign mode of Imperial Assault, are the new characters. So we're going to go ahead and cover those first. You have Verena Talis here. Her special ability, she can spend 2 strain when adjacent to a hostile figure to interrupt to perform an attack using that figure's attack type, which also gets this surge ability of +2 accuracy, +1 combat. It's a very weird ability, but it kind of makes sense, I guess. You're sort of like ducking out of the way and having your foe shoot your other foe, something like that. And speaking of ducking and weaving, you have Duck and Weave, which is, while defending, if you are adjacent to a hostile figure other than the attacker, you apply a +1, I'm sorry, I always forget the name of that symbol, but the symbol that cancels out one of your opponent's surges to the defense results. Evade. Evade is the name of that symbol. Sorry about that. And then you see she's got a pretty decent health and so on. She also has, of course, I suppose I'll show you the minis too, which are, as usual, Fantasy Flight quality, very, very good. So I can get this to stop moving. So there's Verena herself, and her command cards, or I'm sorry, not command cards, but her special ability deck. Starts off with a military blaster. That's what she'll start off at the start of the game, which has +2 for the surge abilities, +2 damage for 2 surges, and +1 accuracy and a pierce for 1 surge. And then she goes on to different cards like Fighting Knife, Point Blank Shot, and so on. So she's most definitely a ranged character. However, there are actually all the characters in this game have primarily ranged attacks, but especially Loku canola oil here. Here's his miniature. But he's definitely a marksman character. Now, one of his special abilities is these recon tokens, which you have 2 of them that come with his character. You have set your sights. You spend 2 strain at start of or end of an activation to place a recon token on a hostile figure in your line of sight. And then when you or a friendly figure attacks a figure with a recon token, you get +1 damage to the attack results, which is pretty good. That's kind of like a hunter's mark type thing. And then his Clear Minded ability says that while attacking, he immediately applies 2 accuracy to the attack results. Oh, I should mention that, of course, you have the wounded side, and on his wounded side, he loses that particular ability. And then his special cards, of course, you have his rifle, the all-weather rifle, which automatically gets +1 accuracy and has Weaken and Pierce. Now, Weaken is, I don't think that was in the base game. It might have been in Twin Shadows as well. But the Weaken ability says it's you keep that until the end of your activation, and while attacking you apply a -1 surge, and while defending you apply -1 to your evade. And he has things like Scouting Report, spend a strain to exhaust this card at the start of end of your activation to place a recon token on a crate. The hero can interact with that crate during his activation without using an action. So a lot of like time-saving things here. And then we go on to the medical droid. You remember the medical droid from Empire Strikes Back? Well, now he's a character, which makes sense. If you can be other droids, you might as well be able to be the medical droid as well. And he is definitely a dedicated healer with a very bendy miniature, or else he's about to limbo. His first ability is spending a strain and an action in order to search the supply deck for a medical card and claim the card, and then shuffle the deck. He is mechanical, so he cannot be affected by abilities on medical cards. And ready for service at the end of your activation. If you did not perform an attack, you immediately become focused. Which, as you might remember from the base game, gives you the ability to roll an extra green die on the next type of test that you perform. Now, he also has a lot of cards that have to do with medical and healing people, although he starts off with a sidearm, which probably goes against the Hippocratic Oath, I'm saying. They probably don't have that in this universe. But then he has cards like Miracle Worker, which says that you can deplete this card when another hero within 4 spaces of you has suffered a wound equal to his health. Instead of being defeated, that hero recovers 3 wounds. So he is definitely the dedicated healer of the group, not so hot in normal combat. You definitely don't want him getting hurt too much. And then, of course, you have their ally cards, which are also usable in Skirmish. And, well, I'll just go ahead and say this now. There are several new things that happen for Skirmish. Maybe not a ton of stuff, but you have new command cards, new mission cards, and so on. I'm not really going to comment on those. I'm sorry, I don't play the Skirmish mode. This is more about me talking about the campaign stuff. But there is some additional stuff for Skirmish if you're one of the people, many people, who play the game that way. Well, let's talk about some of the Imperial forces. You have one of my favorite types of droids from the series, the HK Assassin droid, who likes to call people meatbags. If anyone is old enough to remember that reference. And here you have his regular and elite cards, who, well, I'm not going to cover all these different abilities and read them all off, but you can see for yourself. So you have the Assassin Droid, you have the Wampas, of course. There had to be a Wampa if you're having expansions about Hoth, who's a very nasty monster, and a really cool-looking miniature. They did a pretty good job with that. You have the Snow Troopers. The Snow Troopers are probably the thing you're going to be using the most, so I'll probably will take the time to talk about that. They have a really interesting ability called Environmental Recovery Gear, where they can spend an action to have you and each adjacent trooper may either recover a wound or discard a harmful condition, which can be quite powerful, and means that they can stick around the battlefield much longer than you might anticipate as one of the rebel warriors. So there are the Snow Trooper miniatures, who are some of my favorite stormtroopers from the original series. I like the Forest people better. And then, of course, the tank. This is the coolest thing. This is definitely the coolest thing that comes in the Return to Hoth expansion, and it's super duper powerful to the point where it only has a red card. But it has 10 health, speed of 4. It rolls a devastating amount of dice for its attack. It has automatic +2 accuracy. It's massive, which means it just like moves over everything, ignores difficult terrain. You can spend 2 actions to focus fire, so normally the enemies, the Imperials, can't spend 2 actions to do double attack, but he can specifically do that against one target, which makes it even more likely you're just going to knock someone out completely or wound them in one shot. And when defending, you can apply either automatically. You can apply either a defense or an evade to your defense results, which is just sick. So that's, I don't know. I had a lot of fun running that as the Imperials. And then you have the token people. These are the more boring people because they don't provide miniatures for them. But you have Leia Organa, who is Leia Organa. You know who Leia is. I suppose we'll look at her abilities. She has battlefield leadership. You can perform an attack, then choose a friendly figure within 3 spaces. That figure may interrupt to perform an attack again, which is pretty darn good. And aggressive negotiations. Choose and exhaust an Imperial class card when you spend a surge. You have General Soren, the vicious commander, or vicious tactician. Bombardment. Choose an adjacent friendly figure. That figure may interrupt to perform an attack. The attack gains blast of 1 damage. Blast 1. So Blast is also something the tank had as well for a surge ability, which basically just says you hit someone, and then everyone adjacent to him can also potentially take damage if you hit. Whether you do or not, I think. Then you have more ally cards here. Figure for Imperial, you have Dengar, the bounty hunter, who I think was in Empire Strikes Back, who has a really nasty ability called Contempt, where if you're hitting someone that doesn't have a harmful condition, you can spend a surge to give them a harmful condition, and if they don't have a harmful condition, he automatically gets a surge. So that's happening. And then you have these Echo-based troopers for the Alliance, the Rebels, to use, who have front line while attacking. If the target is within 3 spaces of you, you may replace a blue die in your attack pool with a red die. And efficient travel, you ignore additional movement point costs for difficult terrain and hostile figures. And if you're wondering, yes, that is Cliff Clavin. That's definitely an inside joke. Let's take a look at the terrain. I mean, there's a ton of new stuff in this, a ton of new terrain, and a lot of it is callbacks, of course, to Empire Strikes Back. You have this the gun turret, and all of these, of course, are double-sided. You have a busted snow speeder. So I'm not going to show you all this, but you see, not all of it is just snow. There are missions in this set that do not have to do with the snow planet necessarily, and I guess that's all I'll say. I'm always feel weird and funky about talking about spoilers for the campaign, especially for someone who... people who are always just play as the Rebel players, because that's kind of supposed to be a secret. But lots and lots of terrain for you to add. And also, I will mention, while I'm not going to comment specifically on the skirmish rules and what I like and don't like about them, this does give you the capability of playing a 4-player skirmish. And of course, it comes with a sheet that has a specific map set up for skirmish as well. But moving on. There's a lot of other new cards in the set. There's new item cards. Just take a look at some of those. Like the Underbarrel HH4, Environmental Hazard Suit, which I kind of alluded to before, the Vibro Gear Generator, or Vibro Generator, which lets you lose surges in order to gain damage. So lots of cool new items. You have new Imperial class decks, which some really cool abilities. Like this class deck is going to give you the ability to get your starting ability is Explosive Munitions, which lets you... when you declare an attack, you may replace a die in the attack pool with 1 red die, and it gains Blast of 1. There's Blast again, which I think is just a really cool ability, if you're not on the receiving end of it. And Strike Force, which is the other class deck, which lets you, while attacking, it's an attachment, so you attach it to one of your regiments, and they gain the ability to reroll 1 of their attack die. There are new agenda cards for the Imperials, some of which I should actually probably keep secret from the Rebel players, if you're a Rebel player, but... just a lot of new abilities, new rewards, specific to some of the new missions that are in the game, like a medical upgrade for the medical droid, things like that. There are a bunch of new mission cards to add, character-specific missions for the 3 new characters that are in the game, as well as new threat missions as well. And that's pretty much it. That is a lot of content. I don't want to go into excruciating detail about what's on all of the cards, but needless to say, there is a ton of stuff. The rulebook for the campaign book and / rulebook for Hoth, Return to Hoth is huge. There's a lot of content here, a lot of stuff for you and the players to go through, no matter which way you choose to play the game. That is the Return to Hoth expansion for Imperial Assault. Let's get to my final thoughts. Now, just as a little bit of context, I never buy the small expansions for Imperial Assault. It's too much for me, all right? I don't play the game enough to warrant getting every single little character. It's nice to have the miniatures for them, right? Like when I bought Twin Shadows, notoriously, despite having Boba Fett big on the box, it didn't have the Boba Fett miniature, so I bought that. But I never go for any of the other ones. It just doesn't really interest me that much. I might have bought Han Solo as well, just to have his miniature too. But where I'm most interested in the game is these big box expansions, because it adds so much content and interesting stuff. So I liked Twin Shadows, but Return to Hoth, I think, is on a whole other level. It's got, much of the same level of content, but it just feels like it adds so much more depth, and it also ties it more directly to the movies, and of course one of the best, some would say the best Star Wars movie, The Empire Strikes Back. So it's nice to have that callback and to get that nostalgia kicking in again, whereas Twin Shadows and some of these ancillary small packs are just like, okay, here's some things, Star Wars related. This one feels much more like you're delving into the movie universe, even as you are just sort of doing stuff off to the side of the movie universe. But I really like the new characters. I like that there is now, the Mon Calamari, the Admiral Akbar type character. That's my favorite of them. And when we were doing the quote-unquote playtesting for this set in order to do it for review. I was the Imperial player the whole time. Someone's got to do it. The person who knows the game the most is going to be the Imperial player. That's fine. But if ever I go through this again and do the on the Rebel side, I'd like to be that Mon Calamari character. I think Loku. I think he's a really cool character. I like the Med Droid. Now you have a dedicated healer, and it's funny that they made him the Med Droid who gave Luke his arm, or that type of droid. And it's fun that he's really good for healing, but just not himself. So it's something to be cautious about, and I think that's a nice twist on it. The other character, Verena, she's fine. I don't think she's different enough from some of the other characters we've already had in the past to really stand out. I'm glad that there's more female characters, although I think this game hasn't really had any issues with that. But I don't think she's particularly interesting. But the other two are solid. I love the new troops. I love the tank. That tank is so fun to control. It's not so fun for the Rebel players, I'll totally admit that. But I imagine, I don't see, well, never mind. I had a rabbit trail of thought. I'll just drop. But I like the tank a lot. I think it's very fun. It's really cool to bring out. It's really devastating the first time it comes out because obviously when I'm unpacking the expansion, the first time that we played the first campaign in this book, the other players saw the tank and they're like, "Oh man, it's going to be like boss when we get to 5 missions in." No, I'm summoning it now, right in the first campaign, and it's really tough. And of course, everyone's like, "Focus on the tank, kill it," and they failed the first mission because they did that. But it takes so much attention away from everyone else. I'm sorry. I guess I should have said spoiler for... Okay, hopefully you're not going to be a Rebel player watching this. Sorry. But I had fun explaining how I got the jump on my Rebel players. But I like the Snow Troopers. Those are a really cool version of the regular Stormtroopers. The Wampas. The HK droids. I really was happy to see that callback to the Knights of the Old Republic. I don't know if they've popped up in any other fiction because I wasn't keeping track of them that much. But I was like, guys, it's the meatbag guys, and they're like, what? No one else understood the reference. I'm old, so I was really happy about that. So as far as the basic stuff of the set, the characters and the new troops, love it. That's reason enough, I think, to get the expansion. If you do play Skirmish, I think there is a ton of content here because now you have new maps. You have some new cards, but I think the maps are the main thing you'd be interested in. And the capability to play with up to 4-player for Skirmish, I suppose, would be very interesting. I don't know. I played Skirmish the first time I got Imperial Assault. I was like, okay, that's fine, I'm done. So I haven't been keeping up with it at all. I don't know that a 4-player Skirmish would be that tremendously more fun than a 2-player, but now you have that option. There's tons of new stuff to add to the other decks, item cards, mission cards. The new missions for the 3 new characters are pretty interesting, I found, as are some of the different reward cards and things like that. So I think this is a very solid set. I like that they're... getting as close to the movies as they possibly can, as is possible. I'm really hoping that one of the next big sets that they come out with in the next year will be based on The Force Awakens. I don't know if they want to go that far ahead in the timeline, because it seems like the next natural thing that they would do would be like an Endor box set, Return to Endor. Who really wants to do that, though? Seriously, no. I like Return of the Jedi. I'm kidding. I'm down for some Ewok miniatures. Are you kidding me? So I don't know if they're going to do that, but I'm just saying in general, I like the format. I like the big box sets. I think they add enough content to make it more than worth its while, and enough really interesting stuff. And I like these new characters. I know it can be tough to play as these B-listers, C-listers, but it's still interesting to me. And Imperial Assault, great game, and if more and more content is enough for me, you don't need to change or reinvent the wheel. So that is Star Wars Imperial Assault Return to Hoth. Good recommendation. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.